Hey there, you're listening to the Not So Breakfast Show with Sasha and Ish. On the Not So Breakfast Show this week, we are talking about leverage. At least we think it's about leverage. It's kind of about motivation. It's definitely not about blackmail. But we're going to figure out how to get ourselves to do things, how to get other people to do things. And we also discover how to get Sasha to do anything.
But you kind of only have to wave a greasy $10 note in front of me. And I'm like, okay, let's do that then. That sounds good.
Although why it has to be greasy, I have no idea. But anyway, that's the show. Let's get it. Alright, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today, and this is the one about leverage. At least I think that's what we're going to call it. We're going to talk about the leverage situation. How do we get leverage on ourselves, other people? That sounds a bit manipulative, maybe. But anyway, to make sure it's not manipulative and to help me with that conversation, Sasha Coburn, like in the pink hat.
Well, I don't know if it's leverage that we're talking about, but I want to be really clear, it's not blackmail. We're not talking about blackmail. I think by the end of the show, we'll know what it is we're talking about.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Yes, I've got a pink hat on. I'd like you all to just visualise me looking athletic in my pink cap.
And it's got an H on it,
It's got an H. Yeah, I'm not going to say what the H is for. Harry Potter. When I had lunch today and a friend, I have lunch every day, but today when I had lunch, my girlfriend said to me, "Oh, are you still doing that 40 days with no sugar thing?" And I just had to say, "Shut your face." So I've got an athletic hat on, so let's focus on that.
Let's focus on that. Actually, the H reminds me of, and I know because Chris challenged me to bring more British TV into the conversation.
Yes.
Reminds me of Red Dwarf, because one of the characters on Red Dwarf is a hologram, and you know he's a hologram because he has an H on his head.
Best show ever.
Best show ever.
Red Dwarf.
I love that show. Well, anyway, we are talking about leverage, or maybe we call it the one that's not about blackmail. But it's actually come from a story that I heard years ago, and I wish I could remember who it was that told it to me or what presenter it was, because I can't, so I can't reference them. But it was a really great presentation. And what he did was he proposed this situation where he said he had a group of people on a building. And let's say that there was a massive high-rise building, and on the roof was this group of people, of which we were one of them. He was kind of talking about people in the room. And then he had another building that there was no one on. And the only thing that was connecting the two buildings was this thin plank of wood. And it was even a little bit saggy in the middle because that's how far stretched out it was. And he said to the group, "I believe I can get everybody to cross that plank to the other side using a series of different situations." And it was interesting because he kind of said, who here is just absolutely scared of heights? And people go, "I'm scared of heights," and all this kind of stuff. So he was kind of building it up. He said, right, we need to get you all across to the other side. You're on this building, I need you on the other side. He said, hands up, who would just do it just because I asked them to? So they would literally be first. And there was actually a few people put their hands up. Like that whole kind of recognition, I want to be first, I want to be the first one to do it, I'm not scared, I've done stuff like this before. And so then he kind of moved them across to the other side of this, the building, or the metaphorical building that we were talking about. And then he said, okay, well, who wouldn't go if I asked them to? And basically everyone else was putting up their hands. And he said, well, what would make you go? And then this lady said, well, can I ask some questions? And he said, yep, what would you like to ask? And she said, well, can I crawl? Do I have to walk? Can I actually hold on tight and then kind of edge my way across? And he goes, yeah, you can do that. So she was like, oh, well, in that situation, I'd cross. So he managed to get her across the building. And then other people were asking questions going, well, is there any safety equipment? He says, no. Is there a safety net down the bottom? He goes, no. If you fall, you're dead. And so people were kind of going, oh. And he said, okay, so I've got a group here. You guys aren't crossing. And they go, no. And he goes, okay, $100,000? Who'd do it for $100,000? And someone immediately put up their hand as soon as there was money.
Cheapskate,
yeah,
$100,000.
Yeah, $100,000. He was like, woohoo! But he's like, yeah, I'll cross. So he was across the other side. And then slowly he's just started upping the money, $500,000, $1 million. Suddenly the $100,000 person's going, can I come back? It's like, nah, you made your choice. So, $1 million, people are starting to cross. So as the reward got higher, people were then opting to come across. But it got to a point where it didn't matter how high the money was going to go. This group, the fear was either so strong, or that kind of uncertainty of whether they would fall or be successful or not was so strong. It didn't matter where the money went. It got to a point where it wouldn't even matter. Like, I'm not going to make that step. So then he said, I still think we can get you across the other side. Now, it's getting pretty interesting at that point, because you've now got people that have crossed and people that are going, well, I didn't cross because of the recognition. I didn't cross because of the questions and the control. And I didn't cross because of rewards. So what are you going to do? So then he said, well, imagine if I put your family, maybe your kids, your spouse, on the other side of that building. And I said, if you don't cross that building, you don't get to see them anymore. And he kind of just let that sit for a while.
Was that a threat or a promise?
Yeah, well, that was it. It was kind of quite sinister.
Is that fear or reward?
Yeah, but slowly people just started crossing the room to the other side when they kind of realised that situation. But then there was a whole lot of people that stayed behind and goes, well, you don't know my family. It's probably better I stay here. So then it got to the point where it's like, well, it didn't really matter who was over there. They weren't crossing either. And then he said, well, I still think I could get you to cross. And he said, I'm just going to set fire to this building, and the only way you live is to cross. Now, at that point, all of a sudden, you've now got a situation whereas if you don't cross, that fear of falling is probably outweighed by the fear of the fact that you're going to, burn in this building. So then pretty much everybody, from what I remember, crossed over. He said usually there's one person that stays behind, and they just can't do it. Like, literally in that space where they go, the fear of my failure or falling outweighs even the burning. So yeah, interesting fact. But as he was kind of describing these different situations, people would be triggered and they were getting leverage on themselves. And he kind of alluded it back to, sometimes we want to get leverage on ourselves to put a new action in place or to make a decision. And I think that's really the frame for what we're going to be talking about today, is maybe looking at those different situations.
Yeah, it feels to me like a bit of a discussion about your motivation and drive, and to notice what motivates and drives you, and then to use that to get yourself to do stuff to move from a position that you've got stuck in. There's two things that spring to mind for me. The first one is when I used to do weights and weight training and it got really heavy, I used to say to myself things like, 2 more and you win $1 million, which is all just made up in your head. And then when that didn't work, because I knew I was just bullshitting myself, I'd go, 2 more or my children get shot. And which is just two versions of the different thing, right? Trying to, like, what could you do if there was something more on the line? And they reckon that, Olympic athletes and the people that are incredibly are good at sports that are hard, like rowing as an example, they just learn to get addicted to the feeling of being absolutely spent and smashed for every workout. So they're not playing stupid Jedi mind tricks with themselves. They just know that they can go faster and harder. Remember in the Nike book, they talked about the guys that were trying to run so hard they died?
No.
They just wanted to know the limits of human endurance. Wow. So they just tried to run as fast as they could for as long as they could until they wondered if they could get their hearts to kind of explode. And of course that didn't happen, but the idea was, what are the limits? And so some of us need this leverage on ourselves. We need to understand what drives us. Is that kind of what we mean?
Yeah, well, it's so funny about the run until you kill yourself. Now, whether it's urban legend or whether it's something I actually remember, but that just triggered a thought where I remember a story about a guy who literally tried to commit suicide by just sprinting. He was overweight and he tried to give himself a heart attack so that his family would get the insurance. But every time he tried, he just couldn't do it. And he just tried and tried and tried. He got fitter and fitter and fitter. And actually, he started to get addicted to the running feeling. And then all of a sudden, started feeling less suicidal because he had this output. And what started out as this, I'm going to do this and it's going to cause me to have a heart attack, all of a sudden ended up being something that he ended up getting into running.
Sounds not true, but I love it.
Exactly. We'll go with the urban legend side of that.
Sounds like someone was selling like a weight loss drink after telling you that story. But it makes sense, right? Yeah. The idea is great. So the second thing that comes out when you were telling the story about the what I'm going to call the burning building. Because when you started to tell it, I haven't heard it before. The first question that popped into my head was, is the building on fire?
Right.
Because if the building's on fire, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But I wonder too, if the person who didn't go, there's still always a little bit of optimist. There's a little bit left where someone's going, it's okay. It's going to be all right. And you know that meme that's doing the rounds at the moment where the dog is in the kitchen and there's just fire all around and the dog's going, everything's fine. It's okay. And that's a form of denial too.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get stuck in situations where we know that we should move, but there's a little bit of us that goes, help might still come.
Yeah.
I can be rescued. I'll just wait.
Yeah, or we're just not recognizing the opportunities, the pressure, the leverage that's all around us. It's
All the danger.
All the danger.
So what do you know for you in that story, when would you cross?
I would probably cross when the reward got high enough. So I'm definitely reward driven. So if I get to do this, then I get that. But I would definitely have crossed with the negative stuff that started to come through as well. What about you?
I've just never grown out of growing up poor. So I'll do just about anything for money. So it's a particular award that interests me. There's some rewards that I could not care less about. But you kind of only have to wave a greasy $10 note in front of me and I'm like, okay, let's do that then. That sounds good.
Maybe we just unpack each of those like motivations and kind of maybe situationally where they might apply. So if we think about the recognition one, some people do love recognition, right? That is a motivator for them. So they just want to be recognized as the first person, the best person, or recognized for being doing the work. And I think sometimes the default of businesses is just to maybe reward. Oh, you did that. Here's some movie tickets. But if that's not your trigger, if actually them thanking you in front of everybody at the staff meeting or the email that went out is going to be more motivating for you, then that's something that's interesting to know about yourself and probably a good thing to tell your boss.
Yeah, I think that people love being seen, but not everybody loves the public recognition.
Right, yeah.
That comes with it. So it can be a difference between, do you want the public recognition or just the recognition that your work has been noticed? And how I find this leverage concept interesting is really just that whole self-awareness piece. Is two aspects. One is, do you recognize when you're in a situation that you need to move? Either because the grass is greener, you've got an opportunity, or because there's some danger where you are. I think sometimes we don't recognize that staying in a role for too long or staying in an organization too long is in itself a danger. It's a danger to our earning potential. It's a danger to our growth. It's a danger to our well-being because our sense of excitement and joy and learning and freshness, if we get stale, we're not living our best lives. But I don't think we recognize it as that. We kind of just go, no, it's okay. So I think the first thing is to recognize when we're in one of those situations where we might want to be motivated to move. And then to your point is to understand how can we leverage ourselves, which is how can we trick ourselves into taking action?
Yeah.
How do we get ourselves there?
Yeah.
That's interesting, eh?
So the second one was control. So if I can ask enough questions and I can control the situation a little bit, then I'll make my move. So if it's uncertain, I'm not going to do it. But if I could have a little bit of control and a little bit of light on it, then maybe I would.
Yeah, and I actually think this is really useful when you're trying to manipulate, leverage, get other people to do something, is to understand what's important to them. So it may well be, for example, you're negotiating a holiday with your family and everyone says, yes, we want to go to this place. But your teenager will say, yeah, but can I choose what I do on the days? Or do I get stuck? Because, yes, I can agree that it would be nice to go to the beach. But if I can't use the car when I'm there and go to the movies in town, I'm not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to be stuck. Or even that thing sometimes when you go a place and you don't have a car. I was always a big one about going, yep, I'm super excited to go to that party, but I'm just going to take my own car because I'm going to need to leave pretty early, because I'd rather be at home reading my book. So if people have that sense of control, then they can be more okay about doing something. So if you're trying to get your staff member or a team member or a colleague or a child, or dare I say it, your partner, to do something, think about how much control you can give them or how much control they want.
Cool. What about reward? So money or an item or a something as a motivator. How do we kind of use that maybe for ourselves or use that for other people if we need them to do something?
Or what do you do for yourself? Do you ever say to yourself, if I just do X, then I'll give myself Y? Do you do that, or is that not something you do?
No, all the time. Yeah,
right. So,
yeah.
So tell me about that.
So it's kind of like, well, okay, if you write that report, then you can go to the movies or something. Like I'm always just consciously thinking about, so if I get this done, what can I do that's fun? Or what can I give myself as a bit of a reward? And I think I'm just wired so much for that positive reward thing. Maybe my mum and dad just said, if you do that, you get a lollipop or whatever it is, like that right from a kid thing, trying to get the reward. We were trying to get one of our girls to get the vaccine. And so we were just upping the reward. And suddenly we got to the sweet spot. She goes, yep, that's enough. And then she just got it, But I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't got to the reward side, because I wouldn't have wanted to.
I'll kill your mother if you don't do it. Yeah. You'll never see your sister again.
Imagine you're on a building.
Yeah. There's a small plank. See, I think it's fascinating about where these things come from. Like you're saying, maybe it was your parents. Because in our family, Chris, our dear leader in our family, he is very much do the work and then put your feet up. So he works so hard, both physically around our property. We've got a big property, and he is always mowing, cutting, trimming, raking, weeding, poisoning, you name it. He's out there every day doing something to keep it looking schmick. And then after a couple of hours of labour, he'll come in and he'll be on the couch and he'll be reading his book, watching his women's golf. Yes, yay, right? Yeah. Portia and I, we are the exact opposite. We are the kinds of people that go, before I head into that really hard task that's ahead of me, I just better rest up so I'm ready for the work. So we do the opposite. We get ready. We anticipate that we're going to be tired, so we just have a little rest first.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely like Chris, because even this weekend I was like, okay, mow the lawns, wash the car, and then fix the shower that was leaking. And then I can listen to a record in the sun, have a gin and tonic, and just do nothing for the rest of the afternoon. There's nothing to do. The list is ticked off.
Yeah. I'm like, wake up in the morning, have a gin and tonic, see if you feel like doing anything after that. Brilliant. Interesting.
All right, so what about the threat one, that fear of loss, that you're losing something if you don't do it? In the story, it was if you don't cross the building, you don't get to see your family anymore. So that's kind of like the threat that's there. But can we use fear of loss as a motivator for ourselves or individuals? Well, probably not for individuals. You lose your job, Sash.
I think what we need to be able to do to get leverage on ourselves, which is what we're talking about today, is to be able to evaluate the opportunity cost. So what we're often good at is saying, here's the reward if you do move, but we don't often calculate what's the downside or the risk of not moving. I always used to give the example, like you're sitting on an old couch in your flat, and it's an old couch, it's a bit threadbare, it's not that comfortable, and your flatmate buys a new lazy boy, and they unpack the lazy boy, and there it is in the corner of the couch, the corner of the lounge, and you could get up and go onto the lazy boy, but you'd have to move. And right now, you're kind of just comfy on your old couch. And I think this is true of lots of people in their lives. They get kind of just comfy. They're not making great money, but they're making okay money. They're not really fulfilled in their job, but they're okay fulfilled. So they don't have high motivation to move, even though there are better options out there.
Yeah.
They know they could have more for themselves and live a more fulfilled life or be more impactful. Or you're stuck in a relationship that's, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not treated as well as you'd like to be. You're not as loved up as you'd like to be, but it's better than being alone. You're in that kind of position, right?
Yeah.
something that is better is right in front of you, but you're just kind of stuck. As soon as an old nail on that couch pokes up into your ass, you move.
Yeah.
Because suddenly the pain of staying where you are makes it worth it to make a shift. So I think what we can do is when we're talking about what the loss is, we actually need to recognise what's the cost or the potential loss of just staying where we are. And put some pain points around that. So one of the questions that we ask ourselves when you and I were selling fitness memberships, and people would go, "Oh, I want to go away and think about it," and we say, "Well, okay, you told me 10 minutes ago that you've been thinking about it for a while now. If in, say, 6 months' time you haven't taken any action and you're still experiencing the challenges you're experiencing now with your fitness, you still can't play with your kids, how are you going to feel?" And so we lay that heavy on them when they go, "Oh, if in 6 months' time I was still on the couch, or if in 6 months' time I hadn't moved my job, or in 6 months' time everyone in my team had moved up a level and I hadn't, that would feel stink." So sometimes we need to highlight to ourselves what stink about where we are now to kind of get the oomph to move.
And that probably speaks into the last one, which is that fear state. So if you understand the consequences of not doing something, and then you amplify the pain that's going to be caused by not doing something, then that can shift you. And like often people will join a gym when they're fat enough to make it a priority. Or they'll join a gym when their doctor says if you don't start exercising, you're going to get heart disease. Or they'll join the gym when their partner leaves them for whatever reason. Like sometimes it's a pain thing. It's an external motivator that's come in that's a negative, that's basically caused them to take an action. And how many people give up smoking when they get the cancer, or give up drinking when suddenly they get a health problem from it? They always knew that was a possibility, but then suddenly the reality of it, and then they take the action where they could have taken the action earlier and got a much more positive result.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-Minute Presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-Minute Presenter program.
It's about framing it for yourself realistically. And it might sound like I'm judgy of people who just choose to live kind of within themselves and never push themselves to the edge of what's possible for them. And I'm actually not. I just think you want to be doing that as a conscious choice. You want to say, my conscious choice is to stay in a job that I don't really enjoy because I can't be bothered doing anything about it. And that's a choice I'm making right now, and I'm okay with that choice. Don't look back with regret and going, "Oh, I wish I'd actually thought about moving." You can say, "I did think about moving and I chose not to."
And also recognise that just because your preferred motivator isn't there, it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to shift and move either. Like just because the reward's not great or you don't perceive it to be great doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
I think the interesting thing is that we need to recognise what our motivators and drives are, use them against ourselves or use them in service of ourselves, give ourselves those little tricks. And if the external motivator is not there, it doesn't mean we shouldn't still do it. So let's say you want to switch a career because you're passionate about doing something different, but the money is less, and you go, "Well, I'm really driven by rewards and I want more money." Give yourself a reward. Find a way to make that possible for yourself rather than look for it as an external source. I mean, you're a long time if you're waiting for other people to be the source all the time of the things that you think make you happy.
Yeah, definitely. And also like use both sides of the positive and the negative. If you want to change your shape, join the gym, change your life, that kind of stuff, put a positive reward in place. If I do that, then I can get this outfit or whatever it is. And then have a negative reward in place that says if I don't do it, I have to pay my partner's new girlfriend $500 so she can get a dress. And then,
Oh, you're trouble.
And then give the money to your friends so that they're definitely going to do it. I don't know. Get leverage of yourself either way. Who knows?
Well, I think interesting in what you're saying is this idea of accountability. And one of the reasons that we don't take the radical action that we want to is sometimes we don't have an accountability piece. So if you say to a friend, this is what I want to do, I'm going to give you $100 now. You can only give it back to me once I've been to the gym twice a week for 8 weeks. And the friend goes, yep, I'm your accountability coach. I'm going to make that happen. And you can trust that friend to do that. Little things like that sound really silly. They're actually powerful motivators for you. And you have a coach and a buddy with you. And that's not just, I mean, we're using all these examples of exercise, but it's equally true for everything. I'm trying to start a couple of new habits now where I'm getting back into my routine of writing a thank you card every morning to somebody who's helped me in my life. So the way I set it up the night before. I choose the cards, I put them on my desk, I know who I'm going to write them to, and then I sleep easy. I wake up in the morning, and when I'm fresh, I do it. And I'm just trying to get into those habits. But I've asked someone that I work with to say, can you just email me or set a reminder 9 o'clock every morning that just says, hey, Sasha, have you done the cards yet? Because I'm trying to build a healthy habit.
Yeah.
And so having someone support me in that can be a really useful thing. Please don't check your mailbox. There's a list. There's a long, long list.
I know how Sasha's list works.
Well, yeah, you're thinking about wedding, right? You're still bringing up the wedding. If you're new to the show, if you haven't heard us before, you'll know that there's some deep trauma. When Chris and I got married, you write a list, right? You write a list, and we could only invite 120 people, so we prioritized the list. I mean, this is all true Hollywood story. You know, you do your family and your friends and your workmates, and so I had to ring it. I said, Ish, mate, you and Joe, number 121 and 122. We would love to have you at our wedding, but you haven't made the cut. So could you please be available? We would love you to come. Surely someone in the first 120 isn't going to be able to come. Would you be offended if we then invited you subsequently? And it's just like, no, mate, we'd love to come. And so I'm delighted that they were able to come and be a part of our day, and that was awesome. But I probably shouldn't mention lists with you ever again, right?
Well, I'd like to think now I would be further up the list.
Hey, well, was I invited to your wedding?
I didn't know you then.
I feel that's a piss poor excuse for not inviting me.
Okay, so I think whether this is called the one about leverage, whether this is the one about how not to blackmail, whether this is the one about how to find your motivators and your rewards, what we're talking about is there are different types of way to get leverage or motivation on yourself. And if you're setting goals, think about what sorts of things and parameters can I put in place to make this a reality? Or if you're working with a team or an individual, what type of motivators are going to be best for this team to move forward and do their best work? So I think use all the constructs of the building as a bit of a metaphor, but there's some gold in there that'll help you take it to the next level.
So I did a super cool thing last Friday night. I took myself out for dinner. I was staying in Christchurch, and on the way I joined the public library. The idea that for no money I get a card and you can go into 4 floors of a building full of treasures, magazines, records, CDs, DVDs, books, and you can take up to 20 at a time.
Whoa.
To your house for like 6 weeks. And I went through a phase where I couldn't get books out of the library because I was grossed out, and partly it's because every now and again when I'm reading a book, I absent-mindedly pick my nose. And with library books, I go, oh, I bet other people have absent-mindedly groomed themselves while they're reading this
Or
book.
read it on the toilet.
Okay, no, I had not thought about that. But I've got over my grossness about public libraries, and I went to the business section, and I just found these books, and I have devoured this one. It's called Sell It Like Serhant. I don't know if that's how you say it. Ryan Serhant, Serhant. Turns out he's got like a Bravo show on TV. He's a real estate agent in New York selling multi-million-dollar apartments. And it is just full of gold. Really good info, super easy to read. So if anybody's in sales, any kind of sales, or in fact, just basic life stuff. It's about follow-up, about manners, about discipline, about doing what you say you'll do, about being creative, going the extra mile. I cannot recommend it highly enough.
Brilliant.
Sell It Like Saran. The Wall Street Journal bestseller.
Oh, good. And it was at the library.
So it's free, right? I'll read you what Andy Cohen said about it.
Okay.
Ryan is not only charming and hilarious, he could sell milk to a cow.
Oh, that's good.
Cows don't need milk. Cows drink water.
But don't baby cows drink milk? Sell it to a baby cow.
Yeah, which is why you should not be drinking baby cow milk. Are you a baby
No.
cow?
I'm going to stick with the oat milk.
There we go. The milk of the oat. Or oat juice, as we call it. Nut juice.
Could I have some nut juice in my coffee?